What if the real danger is no longer Sheila herself, but the fear she still creates in everyone around her? Thursdays the Bold and the Beautiful may be less about one big attack and more about control, judgment, and old wounds that refuse to heal. As tensions rise between Sheila, Taylor, Deacon, Hope, and Steffy, one question starts to stand out. Is Steffy protecting her family, or pushing too far? Let's break it all down. And before we begin, tell me in the comments, is Steffy right to distrust Sheila, or is she trying too hard to control Taylor's choices? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more Bold and the Beautiful spoilers and analysis. One of the most intriguing parts of Thursday's episode may come from Hope stepping up to defend Deacon. That alone says a lot. Because if accusations start flying that Deacon's pursuit of Taylor helped put her in danger, Hope may feel pulled into a very difficult position. On one side is the truth that Deacon clearly got emotionally involved in a situation that was already explosive. On the other side is the fact that Hope knows her father better than most people do, and she may truly believe he never intended for any of this to spiral out of control. Hope defending Deacon is not just about loyalty. It may also reveal how she sees guilt. Does she believe Deacon is responsible for the chaos because he pursued Taylor while still tied to Sheila? Or does she see him as another person who got caught in the emotional wreckage of Sheila's unraveling marriage? And honestly, that is the more complicated version of this story. Because Deacon may be guilty of bad judgment. He may be guilty of making emotional choices without thinking about the consequences. But is he guilty of deliberately placing Taylor in danger? That is a much heavier accusation, and Hope may not be willing to let that narrative stick. Still, even if Hope's defense of her father comes from love, it may also expose a blind spot. Sometimes the people who hurt others most are not the villains in the room. Sometimes they are the ones who create emotional messes and then act shocked when someone unstable turns that mess into a crisis. At the same time, Sheila and her possibly soon-to-be ex-husband may be left looking at the ruins of their relationship and wondering how it all fell apart. That question is almost ironic. Because if we are being honest, this relationship always carried disaster in its DNA. Sheila cheated with Deacon while betraying Bill. Secrets, obsession, emotional chaos, divided loyalties, none of that creates stability. It creates intensity, and soap characters often confuse those two things until it is too late. That may be exactly what Thursday brings into focus. If Sheila and Deacon reflect on what went wrong, the real answer may be brutally simple. Their relationship was built on emotional volatility, not trust. Deacon may have wanted passion, excitement, and a partner who made him feel alive. Sheila may have wanted devotion, acceptance, and someone who chose her against the world. But those are not enough to hold a marriage together when suspicion is always waiting just beneath the surface. And now that Taylor is part of the equation, everything gets even uglier. Because Deacon's emotional drift toward Taylor may have exposed something deeper. Maybe he did not just want a different woman. Maybe he wanted a different kind of life. A calmer life. A more respectable life. A life that did not constantly feel one bad turn away from disaster. If that is true, then Sheila may not just feel betrayed. She may feel replaced, and that feeling is dangerous. Not because Sheila must lash out physically, but because emotional rejection is often what makes her most unpredictable. If Thursday lets Sheila sit with the truth that Deacon may have chosen peace over passion, that could hit her harder than any screaming argument ever could. This is where the episode may become surprisingly layered. Steffy still believes Sheila is a threat to her and to her children. And from Steffy's perspective, that fear did not come out of nowhere. Sheila has a long, horrifying history, and scars like that do not disappear because of one heroic act or a few calmer months. But what makes this story more complicated now is that the evidence is no longer entirely one-sided. Sheila did save Steffy's life when Luna went off the rails. Sheila has not attacked anyone in a long time. And whether people like it or not, she does seem to have made changes in the way she carries herself. That does not erase the past. But it does challenge the certainty of the present. And soaps are at their best when certainty starts to crack. Because if Sheila is no longer acting like the monster everyone remembers, then other characters are forced into a deeply uncomfortable space. They either have to admit she may be evolving, or they have to keep treating her like a danger no matter what she does. That second option may be emotionally satisfying for Steffy, but it could also become morally messy. Especially when we remember one very important detail. Taylor showed up in Sheila's space with a knife. That does not suddenly make Sheila innocent in every conflict, but it does complicate the image of who was threatening whom in that moment. And once that complication enters the story, viewers are invited to ask a question Steffy may not want to hear. Is she responding to current reality, or is she trapped in old terror? Steffy may be crossing a line, and Taylor's love life could prove it. The most explosive emotional thread in Thursday's episode may be this one. Is Steffy trying to protect Taylor, or control her? That distinction could change everything. Of course Steffy wants to defend her family. Of course she sees Sheila as toxic. Of course she would panic at the idea of Taylor becoming entangled in anything connected to Deacon, Sheila, and all the instability surrounding them. But there comes a point when concern can start sounding less like love and more like authority. And that is where Steffy may be in danger of losing sympathy. Because Taylor is not a child. She is not someone who needs permission to feel something. She is a grown woman with her own history, her own loneliness, and her own right to decide who belongs in her life. Even if her choices are messy. Even if they are risky. Even if Steffy hates them. That may be the real emotional fracture opening here. Steffy believes she is protecting the people she loves. But if she starts telling her parents who they can and cannot be with, she may be stepping into territory that no longer feels protective. It feels controlling. And once a character begins making decisions for everyone else in the name of safety, that character can become destructive without even realizing it. That is why Thursday could be such a strong setup episode. Not because someone has to explode. Not because there has to be a huge twist in every scene. But because the emotional lines are getting sharper. Hope may defend the father everyone is blaming. Sheila may be more changed than her enemies want to admit. And Steffy may be so determined to stop disaster that she ends up creating a different kind of damage. And that kind of fallout can be even harder to fix. So the big question heading into Thursday is not just whether Sheila is still dangerous. It may be whether fear of Sheila is now pushing everyone else into choices that are just as reckless. If Steffy cannot let go of control, if Hope cannot see Deacon clearly, and if Taylor insists on following her own heart no matter the warnings, then this story may be heading toward a clash where nobody gets to claim the moral high ground for long. And that is exactly what makes this episode worth watching. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow's drama could dig even deeper into these fractured loyalties, dangerous assumptions, and emotional power plays. And if this tension keeps building, the next fallout may be bigger than anyone expects.